This is NWA.
Hold on.
Can I introduce this video?
Yeah.
Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. This is 4 little kids with big suits on that don't fit them with fake Uzis in a video.
They would, if I would have given them the green light, they would have did something. And I wouldn't want nothing to happen to somebody just for saying somebody, you know, on the scale from 1 to 10, it's a 0. It was an insult, but not to, you know, to die or nothing like that.
We ended up taking it there, man. Ran in the studio with 9 guns, two shotguns, don't slapped a few cats up.
This other kid over here, they pistol whipped him.
Sent the home naked and all that.
Kicked the shit out of him.
Showed them how we do this, man. We ain't playing no games.
When people think of violent rap beefs, they think of Tupac and Biggie, or maybe 50 Cent and Ja Rule. But hip-hop's real history runs far deeper and bloodier than what the headlines ever showed.
So Nas calls E.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like, E, what's up? Yo, man, that J, man, when I see that on sight, I'm all over that stuff on sight when I see it.
Behind the scenes were feuds that never made the news, backroom brawls, parking lot ambushes, and grudges that went way beyond the mic. The list goes on, and the stories get darker. Let's get into them. In late 1994, the notorious B.I.G. was sitting comfortably at the top of the rap game. Ready to Die had made him the king of New York, and suddenly, every hip-hop magazine in the world wanted a piece of him. One of those was Peace magazine, a Canadian hip-hop publication that landed an interview with Biggie right when his fame was exploding. The idea was simple: get Big to rate his rap peers from 1 to 10. But here's where things started going left. Biggie was drinking heavily through the whole interview.
Back in the days, I think it was 94, around 94, 95, Big had did an interview in a Canadian magazine. But it was like he was rating everybody from on the scale to from 1 to 10.
Right. At first, it was all cool. When they asked about Tupac, despite the growing tension between them, Biggie kept it fairly balanced. He acknowledged Pac's talent, but threw in a few production critiques. Snoop got a solid 8 out of 10. But when the conversation turned to Bay Area artists, Biggie's whole energy shifted. The ratings got ugly. He gave Spice 1 a 2 and E40 a 0. And he didn't stop there. In his drunken honesty, he allegedly said, "I hate that dude."
It was you and Spice 1. He gave Spice 1 a 2 and gave you a 0.
A 0, bruh. Yeah. You feel me? Even if I didn't like him, I wouldn't give him a 0.
Like a 3 or something.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, 3. Give me something.
That one line traveled fast, from a small Canadian magazine all the way to the streets of California. And in the Bay, where E40 was already a regional legend, that kind of disrespect didn't fly. By 1995, E40 wasn't just another West Coast rapper. He was a businessman, a trendsetter, and one of the most respected figures in Northern California. His slang had shaped the entire West Coast. His independent grind had inspired countless rappers, and his street ties were strong. To his people, dissing E40 was like disrespecting the whole Bay. So when Biggie's comments reached California, it was taken as a straight-up declaration of war. Not long after, Biggie got booked for a show in Sacramento, unaware that he was walking into a setup that had been quietly brewing for months. From the jump, something felt off. The venue wasn't a typical concert hall. It was more like a warehouse, with barely 15 people scattered around. For an artist of Biggie's status, that was weird. Larry Burns, Biggie's manager, knew something was wrong, but even he couldn't have guessed how bad it was about to get.
They have a DJ playing, and we're still looking around, we're like, it's not a lot of people here. It's maybe 10, 15 people here at the most.
What Biggie didn't realize was that this show wasn't really his concert at all. It was a trap. The event was organized by Little Bruce, E40's cousin, and a respected figure in the Sacramento hip-hop scene. During Little Bruce's set, the venue had been packed with his people, but when Biggie hit the stage, most of them had strategically cleared out, leaving behind only those who had business with him. Biggie, being the pro he was, went on with his set anyway, even though the vibe was tense. Midway through the performance, coins started flying toward the stage. In performance culture, that's about as disrespectful as it gets, basically calling a platinum artist a street performer begging for change.
So, Big goes on. He's performing. All of a sudden, they start throwing coins at him. I'm like, yo, what the is that about?
But things were about to get way more dangerous. After the show, Biggie and his crew headed outside, ready to leave, only to realize their limo driver was gone, on purpose. Then, across the dark parking lot, the sound of car trunks popping open echoed through the night. It was coordinated. Multiple cars had been waiting, armed and ready. Out came serious firepower, and leading the group was Little Bruce, holding a Desert Eagle .50 caliber pistol, one of the most powerful handguns out there.
We backstage at this point, and this to get in the limo. And that's when I approached the scene. I had that 50 on me, that Desert Eagle, you know what I'm saying? About my people's niggas ain't for play out here, nigga, we for real out here.
This wasn't for show. The plan was real, and the anger was personal. Larry Burns, panicking, somehow managed to get Biggie back inside the limo, but they were surrounded. In that tense moment, Burns came up with a desperate idea to call E40. When E40 picked up around 11 p.m., his people were on the line asking for the green light to kill Biggie. Instead, 40 asked to speak to him directly. Biggie got on the phone, and in that moment, everything changed. He didn't make excuses or try to blame the magazine. He owned up to it. He admitted he was drunk, said he'd been stupid, and gave E40 genuine respect for what he'd built.
Man, they got me real drunk, man, and I just got to saying anything, man, and you know, and what else he said? He said, man, Duke, he said, I f with Sprinkle Me, Duke. I rock with Sprinkle Me, Duke.
The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes saved Biggie's life. What could have been one of the darkest nights in hip-hop turned into a story of accountability, respect, and restraint, all because two men decided to talk it out instead of letting pride and anger write the ending.
40 tell me like this, 40 tell me like this. He like Lil Bruce, I be in New York, and I be by myself, basically. So I was like this, all right, cuz I'm gonna get this path, and I fell in line with the whole situation, and you know what I'm saying, Biggie Smalls rode away with his life.
The whole beef between Mystikal and UNLV was bigger than two rappers. It was really a label war between two New Orleans hip-hop empires. On one side, you had Cash Money Records, run by Birdman and Slim, controlling the uptown neighborhood with artists like UNLV, BG, Lil Wayne, and Juvenile. On the other side was Big Boy Records, founded by Charles Big Boy Temple and producer Leroy Precise Edwards, with Mystikal as their star player. Both labels were battling for dominance in the same city during a time when territorial control meant serious money and serious danger. The beef actually started with a bit of calculated planning on Mystikal's part. According to Lil Ya, Mystikal approached him early on, asking about doing a battle even before any diss tracks were made.
What a lot of people don't know is, you know, he came to me and he asked about it before he actually done it. You know, so he planned a rap battle.
When Mystikal dropped his album Mind of Mystikal in late 1995, it featured a song called Y'all Ain't Ready Yet, which blew up nationally, even getting airplay on Yo MTV Raps and Rap City. In that song, Mystikal threw a subliminal shot at UNLV's bounce anthem Eddie Bo with the line, 1, never gonna change my style, never gonna bounce, never gonna bow. It was a clever play on words, referencing UNLV's hit while also mocking the idea of bowing down. At first, UNLV didn't take it too seriously. They thought it was just a little jab that didn't deserve a response. But things changed fast when Mystikal dropped Here I Go, where he rapped, "Stop walking the one way to a effing dead end. But you're yellow, coward-hearted, better bring some water, kick the gasoline can over, get this fire started." This was a direct attack on Yellow Boy, calling him a coward. That's when the situation turned personal.
Actually, we didn't pay it any mind because we didn't think it made enough noise for us to diss him back. But he came back with something else. He dissed us again. He called Yellow Coward or something like that or whatever.
Lil Ya later explained that Mystikal had engineered the whole thing himself. He'd asked for a battle but kept escalating it after the agreement, forcing UNLV to respond harder. In 1996, UNLV came back with Drag 'Em in the River off their Uptown 4 Life album, produced by Manny Fresh. The beat was so iconic that years later, in 2001, Juvenile used the exact same instrumental for his hit, Set It Off. The track opened with Yellow Boy saying, "You fake cheerleading B, you want a ninja like me to beware, huh?" A brutal reference to Mystikal's past as a male cheerleader at Walter Cohen High School. It was something Mystikal had kept quiet about, but now it was public ammunition. The rest of the song tore into Mystikal's manhood, sensuality, and credibility, with lines like, "The queen, I mean the king. I mean he learned many trades / coming to get you round the pen, ready to unwrap your braids. Gay blade, now what you wanna do?" And, "I'ma drop this ussy with the braids off C. I'ma dump his body in Chuck's yard." Drag 'Em in the River spread through New Orleans like wildfire. According to later analyses, It became a local anthem that pushed Cash Money's reputation beyond just the city limits. Even today, it still gets play in New Orleans clubs. Mystikal didn't take it lying down. He fired back with Back from the River, rapping, "About to lay you young big mouth punks down without your pillow, you won't say Mystikal no more." He later followed up with Let's Get 'Em on Master P's Ghetto D album in 1997 after signing to No Limit, where he spit, "I take a braid out my own head, whoop yo with one of my plats." It was a clever comeback, flipping UNLV's attack on his hair into a show of aggression. Eventually, the tension spilled off the records. Mystikal later claimed that he had an encounter with Yella Boy, who pulled a gun on him, but Lil Ya told a different story. He said that Mystikal was actually cool with them. They were like school rivals who just joked around and roasted each other in the hallways. The so-called gun incident, according to him, wasn't serious at all. To him, the whole beef was kayfabe, basically hip-hop's version of wrestling, meant to entertain and build hype, rather than start real violence.
Mystikal actually was our dude. We was so close to Mystikal, it was like when we see each other in the hallway at school, we'll instantly start ribbing each other. You know what I'm saying? And ribbing in New Orleans is like playing a dozens.
Still, the fact that a gun was even drawn showed how deep things could have gone.
He ran into Yella Boy, and Yella Boy pulled a pistol out on him.
He wasn't gonna do nothing with that, man. It was like, you know, you were with Mystikal that day, man.
In truth, the Mystikal versus UNLV beef was a reflection of a much bigger power struggle. Mystikal represented Big Boy Records trying to challenge Cash Money's grip on the city, while UNLV stood for Cash Money's pride and dominance over Uptown. As Turk from Cash Money later said, if you were from Uptown, you had to ride with UNLV. It was like choosing a side in a neighborhood war. But the story didn't end in competition. It ended in tragedy. Less than a year after releasing Drag 'Em in the River, Yella Boy was murdered. On April 5th, 1997, he went to a club called Tammy's in Central City. Reports say he was sitting in his car trying to buy when he was shot in the head. He was only 22. No one was ever caught, and the case went cold. Rumors swirled that his death might have been tied to issues with Birdman over unpaid royalties, but nothing was ever proven.
Well, around the time that you guys parted ways, there was a rumor that Yella Boy pistol whipped Baby and shot up one of his trucks.
Yella did actually go to his house looking for him and, you know, shot up the house.
In the late 90s, Tru Life was still an upcoming rapper trying to make his name in a city packed with giants. To boost his profile, he reached out to Prodigy from Mobb Deep for a feature, a verse he could use on a track that also featured the legendary Kool G Rap. The song was called When You're a Thug, and for Tru Life, it was supposed to be a major career move. He paid Prodigy for the verse, expecting it to be exclusive. He planned to use the track to shoot a small video or put out a vinyl single, anything to help push his name further. But then Prodigy made a mistake that would light the fuse for everything that followed. After delivering the verse to Tru Life, he reused the exact same verse on another song, Never Going Back, which ended up on the Any Given Sunday movie soundtrack. That soundtrack dropped first, which meant the verse Prodigy sold Tru Life was already out there, heard by millions, before Tru Life's version could even get a release.
Mobb Deep incident, man, we had did a record together, me, Prodigy, and Kool G Rap, you know what I'm saying? And we had a little buzz going with the record, and then played itself and spit the verse on another record, you know what I'm saying? Guess he wasn't that talented, and when it spit the verse on another record, when we paid him for that verse already, so we ended up getting to a little controversy.
Suddenly, Tru Life's song was worthless. The verse he paid for, the one that was supposed to help his career, was now old news. To make matters worse, the lyrics themselves were about ambition, struggle, and survival, lines that felt painfully ironic given what had just happened. For Prodigy, it probably wasn't personal. The soundtrack deal came with more money and exposure, 5, maybe 10 times more than what Tru Life had paid. To him, it was business, but to Tru Life, it was straight up disrespect. He'd put his money, time, and pride into that song, and Prodigy had treated him like he didn't matter. That's where the line got crossed. Tru Life didn't just feel played, he felt humiliated. And in the Lower East Side, humiliation is something you can't live with quietly. He tried to handle it the right way at first. He called Prodigy, he called his manager, he reached out multiple times, trying to settle things peacefully, maybe get his money back, maybe get a new verse. For weeks, he made calls and got nothing back. Radio silence. To him, that silence spoke volumes.
I made the phone call. I made more than one phone call. I was calling these kids for over a month, 2 months. You know what I'm saying? I'm calling everybody. I'm calling their manager. I got my manager calling. I got this one calling, that one calling. And you know, they was just showing me no respect.
From his perspective, Mobb Deep was acting like he was beneath them. Eventually, anger took over. He decided enough was enough. If they wouldn't answer the phone, he'd pull up in person. Tru Life felt like he needed to remind Prodigy that not everyone played by rap's rules. Some people still played by the streets. What started as a business misunderstanding turned into a mission to wake him up, as Tru Life later put it, to show him what happens when you disrespect the wrong person.
He treated me like I was some funny style. I tried to holler, he played games. So I had to wake him up, let him know what I was about, you know what I mean?
That decision would shift the entire tone of the beef. Mobb Deep thought they were dealing with another rapper looking for clout. What they didn't realize was that they were dealing with a man who didn't care about fame or records, a man who was willing to take it beyond music, no questions asked. And once Tru Life made that decision, there was no turning back. So one night, Tru Life and his crew planned what would become one of the most infamous retaliations in rap history. They decided to hit Mobb Deep where it hurt. Not on stage, not online, but right in their workspace. The target was Mobb Deep's Manhattan recording studio, a known spot where their affiliates often hung out. Tru Life gathered his people, armed and ready, not for intimidation, but for action. According to Tru Life's own recollection, his team came in fully loaded. They stormed the studio with heavy firepower, multiple handguns, shotguns, and Uzis. It was a full-blown raid, the kind of thing you'd expect from a movie scene, not a rap beef. Inside that studio were members of the infamous Mob, a crew closely tied to Prodigy and Havoc. Ironically, neither Prodigy nor Havoc were present when it all went down. The people who were caught in the middle were their friends and collaborators. Producer The Alchemist, Malik the Hitler, and other members of their circle. Once Tru Life's crew burst in, chaos erupted. This wasn't just about stealing or fighting, it was psychological warfare. They pistol-whipped a few people, robbed them, and stripped them completely naked before sending them out into the street.
So we ended up taking it there, man. Ran in the studio with 9 guns, two shotguns.
Running with Uzis and shotguns and guns.
You know, slapped a few cats up.
These other kid over here, they pistol whipped them.
Sent the home naked and all that.
For Tru Life, this wasn't random humiliation, it was a message. He wanted to show them that he wasn't playing industry games, that he could reach out and touch anyone associated with Mobb Deep. In his words, the act was meant to prove a point, to show them how we do this, that disrespect comes with consequences. A gunshot even went off inside the studio, further amplifying the tension and fear that night. But what made the whole thing even more striking was who didn't get touched. 2 major names happened to be in the studio at the same time, GZA from the Wu-Tang Clan and DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill. Despite the madness, Tru Life's crew didn't go after them. They made it clear they weren't looking for random beef. They were there for a specific reason and specific people.
They didn't even look at me. They didn't even look at Jizza. You know what I mean?
A few of your favorite rappers was in there. You know what I mean? At gunpoint with guns to their faces. But it ain't nothing, you know what I'm saying? There wasn't no drama with them.
GZA and Muggs were left alone, completely unharmed, though Muggs later tried to downplay what happened, looking visibly uncomfortable when asked about it. That night changed everything. The streets were buzzing, and word spread fast. Mobb Deep, the same duo who had built their careers on stories of blood, danger, and street warfare, had just been hit with real-life violence. Their crew had been humiliated in the worst possible way, stripped of everything, both literally and figuratively. It was the kind of moment that could shake the toughest reputations. For Mobb Deep, the fallout was complicated. They didn't want to feed the story or give Tru Life any more attention. Publicly, they stayed silent. When the incident was brought up in interviews and eventually covered in the Beef documentary, Prodigy refused to discuss it. He brushed it off completely, basically saying the topic should be deleted from the tape altogether. That silence became their defense mechanism. By ignoring it, they hoped to take away its power, refusing to validate the attack or acknowledge Tru Life's street victory.
The incident with us and him? All right,
we're not even talking about that. That's totally out the whole tape. You gotta erase that, bro.
Still, behind closed doors, the incident stung. Even though neither Prodigy nor Havoc had been there that night, they felt the weight of responsibility. Their name, their brand, had taken the hit. The crew that bore the Mobb name had been violated, and that kind of stain was hard to wash off in a culture that valued image and fearlessness above everything else. Scarface and Rap-A-Lot versus the FBI. In the late 1980s, Houston's Fifth Ward was a trap, a rough stretch of streets where survival wasn't guaranteed. It was here that James Prince, later known as J. Prince, was raised. He learned that to escape poverty, one had to commit fully to transformation. In 1988, sitting in a closet with his infant son, Prince made a decision that would change his life, to walk away from the streets and build something lasting. That choice birthed Rap-A-Lot Records, the label that would eventually shape Southern hip-hop through artists like Scarface and the Ghetto Boys. But as Prince built his empire, the federal government began circling. In 1988, 76 kilograms were found in a car connected to a dealership Prince once ran. Though Prince was never charged, that bust triggered a massive DEA investigation that lasted over a decade. By 1998, the agency formed a joint task force to bring him down under RICO laws, accusing Rap-A-Lot of being a drug front. Leading the charge were DEA agents Jack Schumacher and Chad Scott. Schumacher had a record of 6 fatal shootings and was known for violence. Scott, nicknamed the White Devil, was feared for his ruthlessness. Together, they harassed, intimidated, and allegedly assaulted Prince's associates, trying to squeeze informants from within the label. Rap-A-Lot employees were beaten, their cars searched, and their jewelry stolen. Prince himself was repeatedly stopped on dark highways, convinced the agents were setting him up for an ambush. The DEA's fixation turned to Scarface, Rap-A-Lot's most famous artist. They believed he was tied in solidly to a federal drug conspiracy and hoped to flip him against Prince. But Scarface wasn't folding. Instead, he fought back the only way he knew how, through music. As the investigation grew more aggressive, Prince took political action. In 1999, fearing for his life, he contacted Congresswoman Maxine Waters. She sent a letter to Attorney General Janet Reno, accusing Houston DEA agents of racial harassment, illegal searches, and intimidation tactics. Prince refused to meet with agents privately. He only agreed to an interview in Waters' Washington office under her protection. There, he recounted how Agent Scott had cornered him at night in tactical gear, trying to lure him into a dark parking lot. The letter shook the DEA. To avoid scandal, the Houston division was ordered to stop all proactive investigations into Rap-A-Lot. DEA Special Agent in Charge Ernest Howard admitted later that without the political pressure, the case would have continued. Furious field agents, including Schumacher, claimed the kingpins were saved. The DEA's suspension gave Prince and Scarface a window to respond publicly. In October 2000, Scarface released The Last of a Dying Breed, and on it, he named the agents outright. On Look Me in My Eyes, he rapped, "I can't get no peace, 'cause Schumacher's been chasing me." And on The Gangsta-ish, the line that shook law enforcement, "F Jed and Chad, it's J Prince and Brad." When Congress convened hearings in December 2000 titled, "Were Criminal Investigations Swayed by Political Considerations?" the tension exploded. Federal agents testified that Prince had used political pressure to derail their operation. Schumacher complained that after the case was halted, Rap-A-Lot's kingpins were saved. The DEA claimed the investigation had seized massive amounts of years prior and was close to landing a RICO indictment before being cut short. Congressman Dan Burton chaired the session, but it was Congressman Ron LaTourette who made the moment unforgettable by playing Scarface's diss tracks aloud in the hearing room. The lyrics were entered into the official record as evidence of Rap-A-Lot's defiance. When Chairman Burton heard that the songs, explicitly naming federal agents, had reached number 7 on the Billboard charts, he was stunned. The agents took the music as a threat, believing it encouraged violence against informants and glorified beating the system. But the reality was clear. J. Prince and Scarface had turned hip-hop into a political weapon, using culture and exposure to shield themselves from an institution that operated with impunity. Though the case was halted, true justice took years to arrive. While Schumacher was quietly reassigned to a desk job, Chad Scott continued working cases, his pattern of corruption deepening. By the late 2010s, the very man who had terrorized Houston was under federal indictment himself. Between 2009 and 2016, Scott used his DEA badge to steal from suspects, falsify records, and even coerce false testimony, just as he'd done in the Rap-A-Lot era. He forced drug dealers to lie on the stand, seized cars for personal use, and when investigators closed in, he and his colleagues dumped evidence into Louisiana swamps.
These days, Agent Chad Scott finds himself on house arrest. A jury in New Orleans convicted him last month on 7 counts. Overall, corruption was the case prosecutors gave him. Perjury, obstruction of justice, falsifying government records. The allegations stem from Scott's work as a DEA agent.
In 2017, witnesses from a 1997 Houston murder case tied Scott and Schumacher back to their old crimes. They testified that the agents had coerced them into lying under oath, framing Lamar Burks, a local producer, to pressure him into cooperating against Rap-A-Lot. Schumacher himself later admitted in an affidavit that they had sought to use the case to force cooperation in the Rap-A-Lot investigation. By 2019, the reckoning arrived. Chad Scott was convicted of perjury, obstruction of justice, falsifying government documents, and stealing property. He was convicted again in 2021 and sentenced to 160 months in federal prison, over 13 years. The DEA's so-called White Devil was now a felon. For Jay Prince, it was vindication. He took to Instagram, writing, "They finally caught one of the 2 DEA agents assigned to take my life over a decade ago. The truth has come to light. 2 decades after Scarface had rapped their names, the justice system finally confirmed what Rap-A-Lot had claimed all along. The agents weren't hunters of crime, they were the crime." Above the Law versus Ice Cube. After Cube left NWA, Eazy-E signed the gangsta rap group Above the Law, who repped Pomona. Naturally, they inherited the beef. Tensions started heating up in 1990 while the group was promoting their debut album, Livin' Like Hustlers. During an LA Times interview that April, group member Go Mac threw some shade at Cube, questioning his street credibility.
We had an interview with LA Times. What signatures, y'all music and everything. So like we talk about what we really was involved with or our colleagues.
He claimed that Cube's hardcore lyrics weren't really based on his own life, but were actually inspired by their lifestyle.
We're not like Ice Cube that went away to college and come back and act like this big time gangster in NWA, which at the time that's what he was. You know, he was a dude that was really sharp with the pen. Kind of a schoolboy, never hustled the street, never banged in the streets.
Cube didn't take the insult too seriously, but he didn't let it slide either. He fired back with a slick response. New Jacks from Pomona should only talk about the 10 freeway, referencing the highway that ran through their city.
LA Times wanted to reply to that. On the interview, he said New Jack from Pomona should only talk about the freeway because that's the only thing that's going through that month.
When the interview dropped, Eazy-E wasted no time stirring the pot. He called up Cold 187 the leader of Above the Law, and asked, "Did you read the paper?"
Eazy-E called me. He said, "Hey man, did you get the LA Times?" I said, "No, man, you gotta see it." He laughing on the phone. He's a big joke, so he laughing, ah! So I get it, I read the statement.
Once 187 saw it, he was heated. He told Eazy straight up that he was going to put hands on Cube. Eazy tried to talk him down, but 187 wasn't trying to hear it.
I called E back and said, "I'm your boy up." As soon as I said, "Oh, cuz, don't be tripping." I said, "Man, that." Real, homie.
As fate would have it, he didn't have to wait long to see Cube in person. That same night, April 7th, 1990, Above the Law was headlining a show at the Anaheim Celebrity Theater, and Cube was backstage doing a magazine interview. In the hallway, he and 187 crossed paths and exchanged a few words, but nothing popped off right away.
So he come, made a meet up in the hallway, said, "What's up that said newspaper? You trying to play me like a buster or something, homie?" Like, oh, you dude, like I said, "What's happening? You want to get down?"
That changed when Cube later stepped into Above the Law's dressing room and confronted 187 at the doorway. That was all it took. Just like that, a fight broke out.
So he come back into my dressing room and say, "What's up?" As soon as he say, "What's up?" I give him to him a 2-piece hot one. Boom, he fall through the door.
It was a rough brawl, but Cube wasn't backing down. He held his own and didn't let 187 get the best of him. The fight eventually ended, but the tension didn't.
So Cube didn't back down either.
No, he didn't. He didn't back down. He got socked out, but he didn't back down. He got socked out, but He didn't back down.
By this point, Cube wasn't rolling solo anymore. After leaving NWA, he built his own squad, Da Lench Mob. These weren't just rappers, they were activists, street dudes, and the kind of people you didn't want problems with.
And when we get to New York, so all the stuff going around the seminars like, oh yeah, the lynch mob here, and they got issues, whatever, right?
So, when Cube and Above the Law ran into each other again at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square for the 1990 New Music Seminar, it didn't take long for things to get violent again.
We see each other going to a panel, right? And we face off right in the middle of the seminar, and we get down, and all hell broke loose.
This time, Cube had stepped away to speak on a panel, but his crew was still around. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and before long, another fight broke out between Da Lench Mob and Above the Law.
Cube was nowhere around. Nowhere around. We tore that whole floor up.
It was a serious brawl, but by the end of it, Cube's side had made their point. After that, Cube didn't seem too bothered anymore. By the late 1980s, New York City was hurting. Hip-hop was born there, but suddenly, the spotlight had shifted to California, and specifically, to Compton. Groups like NWA were dominating the charts, rocking Raiders gear, pushing the gangsta rap image, and reshaping what mainstream hip-hop looked and sounded like. Magazines were filled with stories about the new kings of LA, while New York artists were getting pushed aside. To many on the East Coast, it felt like disrespect, but to Timothy Blair, better known as Tim Dog from the Bronx, it felt personal. Tim Dog was frustrated. He said record labels had stopped caring about East Coast rappers and only wanted to sign acts from Compton. The breaking point came when an executive allegedly told him to grow a jerry curl to fit in. That's when he decided to flip his frustration into a weapon. He later explained that his next move came from pure anger. If he couldn't get attention the easy way, he'd force the industry to pay attention the hard way. Ironically, one Sony executive even told Tim Dog's producer that dissing the West Coast might actually help him get signed. So that's exactly what he did.
There it is. Let's go to this video. This is NWA. Hold on. Can I introduce this video? Yeah. Check it out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 4 little kids with big suits on that don't fit them with fake Uzis in a video.
In July 1991, Tim Dog dropped what would become one of the most controversial records in hip-hop history, F Compton. It was raw and unapologetically aimed at the entire West Coast scene, especially NWA and anyone connected to Ruthless Records. It instantly exploded in the underground, spreading through clubs and radio stations across the country. Tim Dog went straight for Dr. Dre, mocking his personal life and calling out his relationship with singer Michelle. The lyrics were explicit, sensual, and designed for maximum humiliation. I'm so large, I effed Michelle, you shoulda heard how the bi was moaning. Shut up, B, you can't sing. He also went after Dre's reputation for violence, referencing the now infamous assault on Pump It Up host D Barnes. Dre beating on D from Pump It Up, Step to the Dog, and Get Effed Up. In his eyes, he was cleaning up the filth by calling out the misogyny and hypocrisy in NWA's music. Then came the biggest insult of all. He mocked Compton's entire street image while vowing to bring violence to their territory. His threats were stark. All you that riff from the West Coast, I'll dance and spray your like a roach. He mocked their trademark style, rapping about them, wearing all that black, driving them cars, but you still look whack. The lyrical attack was steeped in gang imagery, depicting Compton as a hub of Bloods and Crip clashes, and positioning himself to infiltrate and dominate rival turf with Bronx-bred ferocity. When his debut album Penicillin on Wax dropped later that year, it doubled down on everything F Compton started.
Yeah, everyone ended up getting it in that song.
Yeah.
And then there was a bunch of response records to that song, the most famous of which was Dre Day.
Yeah, that's when they brought in Snoop.
But the West Coast didn't take that lightly. The response came fast and hard. Dr. Dre and his new protege Snoop Dogg fired back on the Chronic with F Wit Dre Day, and everybody's celebrating. And the skit, the $20 Sack Pyramid, both mocking Tim Dog and New York rappers in general. Compton's Most Wanted jumped in with tracks like Who's Effing Who and Another Victim, warning that if Tim Dog ever came to Compton, he'd get handled in the streets. Tweety Bird Locke added fuel to the fire with F the South Bronx, turning the insult right back on Tim Dog and his hometown. Soon, the beef started spilling out of the music and into real life. At the Jack the Rapper conference, a major hip-hop industry event, members of DJ Quick's crew confronted Tim Dog. Things got tense fast, and one of them reportedly threatened to flatten him on the spot. That's when the tough talk started to crumble. Under pressure, Tim Dog admitted that the whole thing was just for publicity. He told them he only dissed Compton to make money and sell records. They let him walk away, but he didn't stop talking reckless afterward. It's the year 2000, and Jay-Z is up at Hot 97 promoting his Rockefeller Records artists. He brought along some of his crew and one of his new signees, a rapper named H Moneybags. Coincidentally, Prodigy from Mobb Deep was listening to the radio on his way to the studio when he heard the name. The moment he got there, he told his friend E Moneybags about it.
Then he had some H Moneybags up there rapping. H Moneybags. So now I go in the studio. I said, yo, E, come outside real quick. Like, let's do this. So E like, what did he just say? H Moneybags? No.
Now here's the thing, Jay-Z and E Moneybags actually knew each other from back in the Brooklyn days. E Moneybags already had a huge reputation in the streets as a stick-up kid, extortionist, and certified gangster. Back when Jay was still on the come-up in the early 90s, he'd even asked E for favors, like helping him get DJs to play his songs at clubs. So when Jay-Z popped up on the radio with an artist named H Moneybags, it came off as direct disrespect. It felt like Jay was trying to steal E's identity and flip it into a brand for his own artist. Prodigy ended up calling Hot 97 immediately, trying to get Jay-Z on the phone. He missed him by minutes. Jay and his crew had already left the studio and were on their way out, but Jay came back upstairs and got on the line. E Moneybags took the phone and pressed him directly, asking who this H Moneybags was and why he was using his name. Jay brushed it off, saying there was nothing he could do about it, that it was just the guy's name. E didn't take that lightly and reportedly threatened Jay right there on air. After the call ended, E was furious, saying if he ever ran into Jay in person, it was on sight.
Jay was like, yo,
that's
man,
his name, man. What you want me to do? Because it's really Bleak's artist, though.
What the f you want me to do?
That situation, according to some insiders, was actually one of the sparks that led to Jay-Z's later feud with Nas. Apparently, Jay had called Nas to vent about what happened with E Moneybags. Nas then reached out to E to get his side of the story. When Nas and Jay spoke again, Jay allegedly disrespected E by saying he only made music for people with money, implying E didn't fit that category. That rubbed Nas the wrong way, and it planted a seed that would later grow into one of hip-hop's most infamous rivalries.
So when Jay speaks to Nas, he go, yo, man, why he bugging out, man? Yo, man, we don't even make music for like that, man. We only make music for that get money.
But the tension between Jay-Z and Mobb Deep wasn't just about E Moneybags. Prodigy had already built up his own issues with Jay. He felt Jay was disrespecting New York, especially after saying, "New York been soft ever since Snoop crushed the buildings." To Prodigy, that was crazy. He and Mobb Deep had gone to war with the Dog Pound when they dissed New York, and Nas had fired back at Pac, but Jay stayed quiet through all that. So when Jay suddenly called New York soft, Prodigy felt he had to check him. The beef between Nas and Jay-Z would later overshadow everything else, but those who really knew what was going on understood how deep it ran. If E Moneybags had ever decided to act on his threat, things could have gone way left for Jay.